To go, and Geo Show is now live. Explorers, are you ready?
Yes!
All right, let's do it. All right. Welcome, all explorers. You are now watching the Geo Show, and the title of today's Geo Show is Magnificent Monarchs. Yes, they are magnificent, and today's show is brought to you by Learn Around the World. All right, you can play along using Kahoot, and we are going to go ahead and practice that right now, everyone, because we use it a special way on the Geo Show. So everyone grab your devices if you're playing along today, one-to-one or as a classroom. And remember that Kahoot pin is 595-361 today, 595-361. We're going to start off with a survey question. So don't worry if you're not logged in yet. That pin is in your chat box, and I am going to throw it back up on the screen now. So everyone, you can go ahead and get logged in. 595-361. Again, 595-361. So we have lots of players already logged in, 93, almost 100. So we're going to go ahead and start with a survey question. Again, don't worry, you're not missing out. If you miss this first question, it is not worth points, but the show must go on. All right, so our first survey question for the day is, where does the North American monarch butterfly go during the winter time? Is it red California, blue Mexico, yellow Florida, or green all of these locations? All right, so most of you are saying Mexico. So this was kind of a trick question. So Mexico is a very, very good answer, but the best answer up there is all of these locations. We'll talk about why that is in just 1 minute. But yes, it is actually all of these locations. And so as a reminder, if this is your first time using Kahoot on Geo Show, you only get 10 seconds. So be really quick with your little digits so you can get those answers in. So that's why we do these test questions. And speaking of Geo Show, we are a geography-based show. That means location matters, and we are going to Mexico today. But let's find out exactly where our locations are today. All right. On this week's Geo Show, we're going to Mexico, and we're following the monarch butterflies. Where do the butterflies go every winter? Well, they visit one small location in Mexico every single winter. It's a 73 by 73 mile area, and the butterflies go to one of 12 locations. Each one of these 12 sanctuaries is located the state of Mexico and the state of Michoacán. However, the majority of the butterflies are found in the state of Michoacán. In fact, over 80% of the butterflies will spend the winter in one of these few colonies. All right, so I'm going to repeat this for everyone. You may hear this question again. So where do most of the monarch butterflies? So if you are not familiar, Mexico has states just like the United States of America. And this state to the east here is called the state of Mexico. And this state is the state of Michoacán. Most of them, actually about 4 sites in Michoacán, is where most of the monarchs go. However, they do go to some of the other surrounding smaller sites as well. But again, remember that most of them go to the state of Michoacán. What's so special about this region of the world? Well, the answer is a unique mountain range in central Mexico called the Transvolcanic Belt. And it just so happens that the center of the Transvolcanic Belt provides the perfect habitat for our little monarch butterflies. So those are the locations that we're visiting today on our virtual field trip right here in central Mexico. Again, a very, very small area that all of the monarchs in the eastern part of the United States and Canada migrates to every single year. It's pretty amazing how they get there. So before we head to Mexico, and before we talk more about that migration all the way to Mexico, it's that time in our show where we introduce our on-camera guest, classroom guest with us, and we like to give some random shout-outs as well. So we have lots of classrooms watching that are not on camera with us today. So I give them some random shout outs as we go. So our first random shout out today is going out to Lee Scott Academy in Alabama. Shout out to all of you guys in Alabama. All right, so I would like to introduce first, we have Mrs. Roots, fifth graders from Irvine, California. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hi.
All right, and do you have a fun fact to share about monarchs today?
Did you know that the monarch butterflies fly from Canada to Mexico about 3,000 miles?
Right, it is about some of them more, some of them less, because if they're not coming from Canada, some of them are coming from Michigan, Wisconsin, so it may not be quite 3,000, but yes, they can come for over 3,000 miles. It's truly one of the greatest migrations on Earth, and it's all done by a little insect. So we're not talking about the large caribou or other large animals or geese or ducks, little bitty butterflies. So it's pretty amazing. All right, so our next classroom that we have on camera with us is Mrs. Hart's fourth graders from Sterling, Illinois. Welcome to the show, guys. All right, and do you have a fun fact to share with us today about monarchs?
Okay, who's got a fact? Go, Abby. Hurry up, Abby. Facts are first, and then questions.
Did you know that monarch butterflies are in Oklahoma and abundance yard, which is bursting with plants like blanket flowers and coneflower flowers?
Right, so great fun fact there. So yes, so they are abundant in Oklahoma and many states throughout the United States and into Canada. And I'm glad you brought up flowers as part of their food source. So we're going to talk about the difference of the different stages of the monarch butterfly because the caterpillars and the adult butterflies eat two different things. So the adult butterflies will eat nectar from all flowers. So great fun fact for us today. Our next random shout out is going out to some homeschoolers. So we have quite a few homeschoolers today tuning in from France and Great Britain. So big shout out to all of you across the Atlantic Ocean. And our next classroom, hopefully we have their audio. I don't see their video, but we have Mrs. Roy's 5th to 7th graders from Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the show, guys. All right, so I don't hear you guys either. So maybe we can toggle on those arrows down in your next to your microphone and camera icons. Let's see if we can work on those. And before we get started and talk about that migration, let's give one more shout out to Barbers Hill High School down in Texas. Big shout out to you guys as well. All right, so we're going to start off today's discussion talking about that great migration. As we just learned from our fun facts, some of them little butterflies are going over 3,000 miles. So how do they get there? Well, all right, so we are going to start with today's migration. And before we do, we have a question that was pre-entered over on Flipgrid, and let's listen to it.
Our classroom question for the Geo Show is, why do some monarchs live for weeks while others live for months?
All right, that is a great question. And because before we talk about the migration, we have to talk about the life cycle. And the reason we're going to talk about the life cycle is because of that question. So most monarchs throughout the year, the adult monarchs only live for 2 to 6 weeks. Most adult monarchs only live for how long, guys?
2 to 6 weeks.
2 to 6 weeks, except for one generation a year, the migrating monarch. The migrating monarch, the one that's living right now, the adults are the migrating monarchs, and they're going to live for 9 whole months. Whoa! So why the big difference? The big difference is the migration. So let's talk about that life cycle. There's 4 stages in the life cycle of the monarch butterfly. The first stage is the egg stage. What's the first stage?
Egg.
All right, the egg stage, and they're going to stay in the egg for 2 to 4 days, or sorry, 3 to 4 days. And so mommy butterflies, monarch butterflies, will lay somewhere around 300 eggs. And again, after 3 to 4 days, these eggs are going to hatch into the larva stage. And the larva of a butterfly is called the caterpillar. And the caterpillar is going to live in this stage, for 10 to 14 days, so about 2 weeks. And this hungry caterpillar, its whole job is just to eat and eat and eat. It's going to grow 2,000% in 2 weeks. And the next stage is called the chrysalis. So this is a pupa stage for insects, but it's called a chrysalis. And I want to repeat, guys, because I get this question a lot. Monarch butterflies do not make cocoons. Monarch butterflies do not make what? All right, they make instead a chrysalis. What do they make?
Chrysalis.
All right, so this is what the chrysalis looks like, and they're going to stay in that chrysalis for about another 14 days, so about another 2 weeks. And if you've been keeping track of your time, it's somewhere around 30 days from egg until the end of their chrysalis stage. And then they will emerge out of the chrysalis to the adult monarch butterfly. And again, most adults live 2 to 6 weeks throughout the year until the migrating monarchs emerge in late summer, early fall, which is right now. Now they are going to live until next March or early April, so the next 9 months. So we're going to talk about this guy today, the migrating monarch. So what's the next 9 months going to look like for this migrating monarch? Well, right now they have stopped mating, they're going to stop laying eggs, and they are flying south, most of them to Mexico. But as we learned earlier, they do go to a couple of different places. So our 3 locations we are talking about today are the countries of Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Okay, over 3,000 miles they will fly across these 3 countries. Now, for most of the year, most of the summer months, the monarchs are going to stay in the northern part of the United States and in Canada. They're only living 2 to 6 weeks at a time. And then in the winter time, most of them are going to Mexico, but a lot of them will go to California. Why is that? Well, it's because of the Rocky Mountains. So the Rocky Mountains are going to split up the 2 populations of North American monarchs. So we have the eastern monarchs and the western monarchs. The western monarchs are going to overwinter on the coast of California, and the eastern monarchs are the ones that go to Mexico. And they're the ones that we're going to focus on today because this is the largest population and this is the biggest migration, the ones that go over 3,000 miles. So what does this journey look like? Well, right now, starting now, they're actively doing it. They are currently flying south, and they start again in late August, early September, and they're going to get funneled west. And they get funneled west by 2 bodies of water. The Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico are going to push the monarchs to the west. And some of them, as you'll see, will trickle down into Florida. So a few monarchs will stay in Florida all year round and through the winter. But the most of them are going to get funneled west by the Gulf of Mexico, and then they're going to hit the Rocky Mountains, and they're going south. So they're going to get funneled down into Mexico. Now, what do they do in Mexico all winter long? Not much of anything. They're not eating. They're not drinking, just hanging out in the trees. And then next March, somewhere around early mid-March, depending on the weather, they're going to start flying north. This migrating generation, the one that just lived for 9 months, they're going to lay their eggs somewhere around southern part of the United States, Texas, Louisiana, or northern Mexico, and they will die. And then their children are only going to live 2 to 6 weeks, fly a little bit north. They will lay their eggs. Eggs will become the caterpillar. Caterpillar will become the chrysalis. And then the great-grandchildren or the grandchildren will fly north 2 to 6 weeks. The whole life cycle goes on and on and on until the following August. And like any good student, we have a great, we like to ask great questions. And I had the question, as I know many of you do, why do they migrate? Why do monarchs do this? No other butterfly does this. In fact, not all monarchs do this. Only the eastern monarchs. So there are monarchs for our friends over in Europe right now. There are monarchs in southern Spain. They do a small migration down to Morocco. There are monarchs in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and these monarchs do not migrate. So why does the North American monarch, the eastern North American monarch, migrate like this? Well, I contacted an expert named Miss Boudet at the University of Minnesota that works at the Monarch Lab. And this is what she had to say. See if you can use your good listening skills and listen for the reason why they migrate.
Migrate because they are a tropical butterfly. They can't survive the winter here, and their food source can't survive the winter either. So milkweed goes dormant for the winter months. It's not growing, it's not green, and it's just got fluffs of seed pods floating all over the place to germinate again in the spring. So they migrate south because they don't have a food source. But we're not really sure why it is that they don't just fly south to where there is a food source, and why it is that they fly south to basically spend the winter hanging out in the trees, because they don't drink anything and they're not breeding or laying eggs for those winter months. They're just waiting.
All right, everyone. Here's our first pop quiz for everyone today. Who picked that up? Let's go over to, let's see if we have Mrs. Roy's class with us. Can we hear you guys now?
Hello.
Oh, okay. We can hear you guys. I don't see you, but did you guys over there, Mrs. Roy's class, so they are in Pennsylvania, did you guys hear why they migrate? Why does the eastern monarch migrate to Mexico?
Is it cold? Is it cold?
They're cold, and if you were listening closely, it's because of something they eat. Let's go over to California. What do you guys think?
Food. They had no food. They had no food.
They have no food source. And what is a very special food source? Let's go over to Illinois. Did you guys pick it up in Illinois?
Come on, Illinois. What do they eat?
Milkweed.
Boom, guys. Virtual high five to all of you. Pennsylvania, Illinois, and California. Boom, boom, boom. All right, so milkweed. Milkweed. So if you forget everything you learned today, I want everyone to remember this. No milkweed equals no monarchs, guys. Again, no milkweed equals what?
No monarch.
All right, and there's a very special reason for that. And let's find out. So if you've never seen milkweed, this is what milkweed looks like when it comes up in the spring. So this is milkweed coming up, very young milkweed. And let's get a close-up shot. So it's very fuzzy on the bottom. And there are many kinds of milkweed that grows all across the country and in Canada. And you get a shot here of why it gets its name. So if you tear a leaf off of milkweed, you'll see it looks like milk is coming out of the stem, and that's where it gets its name. But it's the only food source, not of the adult butterfly, but of the caterpillar. The only food that the monarch caterpillar eats is milkweed. What is the only food that the monarch caterpillar eats?
Milkweed.
So if we don't have any milkweed, will there ever be adult monarch butterflies? No, because the caterpillar only eats the milkweed, and the caterpillar comes before the adult. Now, adults eat other things. So as we learned from our fun facts earlier from one of our classrooms, the adult butterflies will drink the nectar from any flower. As you see, this is not a milkweed flower, and this butterfly, this monarch, is here for the nectar of that flower. So the two most important things that you can plant, everyone, if you have a butterfly garden at your school or you're interested in a butterfly garden, what do you think is the number one thing you can plant in your butterfly garden?
Milkweed.
Milkweed. And we get a shot right here of milkweed. And right now in the state where I live in Maine, they make these seed pods before they go dormant. So they'll release seeds in late fall and then they'll go dormant. But you have to have milkweed for the caterpillars, and you want to have other plants that flower in the fall, early fall and late summer, for the migrating adults, because they store up their fats. They store their fat. They live off all winter long. They're not feeding in Mexico. They're only just hanging out in the trees. Okay, so we're going to open it up for our first round of questions here. So if you're on camera with us, make sure you get your students sent up to the camera to ask their question. And if you're off camera, make sure you get those sent in to #GeoShow over on Twitter, or you get them sent in using Zoom. So first, let's go to Mrs. Powers' classroom. They want to know, where do the monarchs find their food as they travel to Mexico? This is a great question. Well, monarchs rely on people now, because people plant butterfly gardens, and many towns have done this all across the country. So the population of monarch butterflies has been going down since about the early 90s. It's been going down, 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 and it got extremely low a few years ago. But the population has been coming back up the last few years. And part of that, many people believe, is because many schools like yourselves, many towns have been planting butterfly gardens with the number one thing, which is milkweed, and the number two thing for the migrators, which your question you're asking about the adults, you need flowers that bloom in late fall, early spring. So that's what they're feeding off right now as they're traveling south. Great question there. Let's go over to Illinois. Mrs. Hart's classroom. Do you guys have a question for us?
Why do monarchs lay their eggs in Mexico?
All right. So great question. They don't lay their eggs. Why don't they lay their eggs in Mexico? Is that the question?
No, why do they?
Okay. They don't lay their eggs in Mexico in the central part where they go during the winter. They will lay their eggs in northern Mexico. And the reason is they're going back north to the breeding grounds, to where all the milkweed is. So they're flying north. So remember, when they go to Mexico, they're not mating, they're not laying eggs, there's no caterpillars in central Mexico. So the people in central Mexico only see the adults. They never see the caterpillars because they don't lay eggs there. But they do lay eggs in northern part of Mexico. All right. And let's go over to Mrs. Roy's class in Pennsylvania. You guys have a question for us?
Yes, we have a question. Go ahead, Ian.
Where do monarch butterflies get their color from?
All the same kind.
So where do they get their color? I don't know the science behind like why exactly they are all orange. But I'm gonna tie this. I'm gonna answer it this way. So milkweed, everyone, is a poisonous plant. Monarchs are poisonous butterflies. Does anyone know? Do you know where they get the poison from? Do they make it themselves, or do they get it from somewhere else? All right, so I'll give it to everyone. They get it from the milkweed. So when the caterpillars eat the milkweed, they get the poison from the milkweed in their bodies, and it stays in their bodies through the chrysalis stage and into the adult stage. And because of that, they are poisonous animals. So many times in the animal kingdom, when you see animals that are really brightly colored, not all the time. Sometimes it's a form of camouflage. Like there is a butterfly that looks like the monarch, and that type of camouflage is called mimicry. What type of camouflage is it, everyone? Can you say mimicry? Okay, so that's when an animal has part of its camouflage to look like another animal that is venomous or poisonous. And they do that as part of their camouflage. And in this case, the monarch really is poisonous, and it's that really bright orange saying, don't eat me, don't eat me, I'm not going to taste good. All right, it's a great question there. Let's go over to California. Do you guys have a question for us?
How do monarch butterflies find their way to Mexico?
You know what? That's a great question, and it's one of those that we don't fully know the answer. I can tell you how they get to Mexico. What's really a mystery, still a mystery today, is how they make it to these small spots in central Mexico. They come year after year after year. Remember, they're at least 5 to 6 generations removed. So when they migrate to Mexico, the ones that go there now, next year, their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren will all live 2 to 6 weeks until the next generation goes to Mexico. How do they know where to go? It's amazing. It's really one of the great mysteries that we still don't know the exact answer. But this is how they generally go south. And to show you, let me bring up my whiteboard for everyone. And I have amazing drawing skills. So you should all take my art class that I provide. Just kidding. All right, so this is my monarch butterfly, and he's, remember, flying south. He's flying south. And the way that they navigate is something called the sun compass. And the way it works is we all know that the sun comes up on the east, in the east, right? So we're going to draw it on the left here because remember, we're heading south. South is at the top. And the sun sets in the west, out in California, where our class is with us from Irvine. And sun setting out there. So the monarch knows generally if it flies, in the morning hours, if it keeps the sun on the left-hand side over here, it's going south. And then the evening late afternoon hours, if it keeps the sun on its right side, it knows it's going south. And this is basically how the monarch navigates south. And then remember, the Gulf of Mexico and the Rocky Mountains funnel all of them down into Mexico. So that's their general form of navigation. Now, when they're in Mexico, we don't really know how they get back to these same locations every year. It's really is a mystery, and it's really one of the great ones of the animal kingdom. All right, great one, great questions, everyone. Are you guys ready to head to Mexico? All right, let's do it. Let's go ahead and head down there as part of our virtual tour. And so I hope everyone has their virtual passports with you today because we're going to Mexico. Let's find out which one of those sites are we going to go to today. Because remember that there are 8 to 12 different overwintering sites depending on how many monarchs there are every year. And we're going to, as we learned in the introduction, the monarchs can overwinter in one of 12 sites located in the state of Mexico and the state of Michoacan. For your virtual tour today, we're going to be visiting the overwintering site of Piedra Hirana. The butterflies at most of the overwintering sites stay on the southwest side of the mountain. This way they get more sunshine and they stay warmer throughout the winter. To start this virtual tour, we're going to leave Mexico City and drive to Piedra Hirana. All right, so abracadabra, everyone. We are now in Mexico, and we are driving to the overwintering spots of Piedra Hirana. So before we hike up the mountain, I want to point out a couple of things to everyone. Let's freeze it right here. And across the street, you'll notice that over here is primarily a pine forest. So these are mostly pine trees. Pine trees are soft woods. That'll be important later. So remember that. Down here in the parking lot, we see lots of big tour buses, and we see lots and lots of cars here. So lots of tourists come here to see the monarch butterflies. They come from all over the world and right here locally in Mexico. And because of that, it's important because it brings in money to these local areas that they are pretty rural areas. And one way it brings in money is we see right here, people bring up cooler fulls of home-cooked food. So they sell tortas, tamales, tacos, really delicious food. And also, some people bring up their horses. So you can actually rent a horse to ride up the mountain instead of walking up a mountain. And what do you guys want to do today? Do you want to walk up or do you want to ride a horse up?
Ride a horse.
How does 100% of the time every GeoShow explorer chooses to ride a horse up? Well, somehow I knew that. So we were to take a horse up, guys, and as we're riding our horse up, I have to tell you, when I go back next time, I'm not taking a horse because I know what you're thinking. Well, horses are way cooler, but you see how high this lady is? You know, you're already sitting 4 to 5 feet off the ground on the back of a horse, and this isn't really one of the steepest sections, but you can see each time that the trail switches back, so these are called switchbacks if you go hiking, when it turns and goes back up. So each time you go back up a switchback, it's got a steep drop down the side. It's kind of scary. Sometimes you're looking down 15, 20 feet on the edge. You know, I don't want to fall off that. I don't know about you guys. All right, so you can't ride a horse all the way up. So you have to get off. We're going to have to walk a little ways. And as we're walking, I want to go ahead and freeze it here again because one of the cool things to talk about, or important things to talk about when we're talking about tourism and at different places, is the impacts that they bring to places, especially in the forest. And so this isn't police crime scene tape. That's what it looks like from the movies, right? What this is just tape, and it's keeping people hiking on the hiking trail because you don't want to destroy all the vegetation. There's so many people that you want to stay on trail. So if you're a big hiker, leave no trace, guys. Take only pictures. Leave only footprints. And right there on the tree, does anyone see what that is? Right, it's a monarch butterfly. So the closer we get to the colony, that's one vocabulary word we're going to learn today. The overwintering sites with all of the big groups of butterflies together is called a colony. And we are at the overwintering site of Piedra Hirada. Now, we are in the state of Mexico right now, but if you remembered earlier, I said most of the butterflies go to the state of Michoacan. So remember that. Most of them are going to Michoacan. And as we get further and further up, remember we'll start to see monarchs all over the place. And does anyone have a guess here? This is a pre-question for everyone. Is this a boy monarch or a girl monarch? What do you guys think?
A boy monarch.
All right, so lots of guesses there, but don't worry, I'm going to show you how to tell the difference. But that's a little pre-question for you. So the closer we get to the colony, we'll start to see them more and more on the trees. We'll start to see them up in the sky, flying around. So let's go ahead and keep hiking here. And the closer we get to the colony, they're flying all in the air. They're all on the ground. So a lot of people are surprised to learn this, but monarchs can only fly when it's over 60 degrees or it's over 50 degrees and sunny. So if the sun is out and they're in the sunlight, it can be in the 50s and they can fly around. But if the sun goes in early March and they're down on the ground, they can't fly back up in the trees. Also, they can't fly in the rain. So it needs to be warm for them to fly. But I do want to point out this guy to the right. And if we take a look at his back left wing, something looks a little odd there. Does anyone see anything wrong with his back left wing? Let's go over to Mrs. Roy's class. What do you guys think?
It's, I don't know.
They're small.
Right, do you see anything? Look at the back left, right in there. I'm highlighting, or I'm drawing a line. Is anything missing?
Oh,
The antennas?
it's missing a wing. It's a wing.
Right, it's missing a piece of its wing. And do we have any guesses in Illinois? What do you guys think? Why is it missing a piece of its wing?
Maybe it got cut off by something.
Right, and what do you guys think maybe it got cut off by over in California? Do you guys have a guess?
Do you guys have an idea of what it got cut off?
It got caught in the tree. It got caught on a tree and then tried to fly away and it ripped off.
One voice.
Right. So, you know, the thing is, we don't know. We don't know. Maybe it got hit by a big truck crossing a highway on its migration down. You know, maybe a predator tried to take a bite out of it. And does anyone remember, are monarchs poisonous?
Yeah.
All right. And why are they poisonous?
Milkweed.
Right, milkweed. So maybe something took a bite out of it and it just didn't taste good because they keep the poison or the toxins in their wings and in their exoskeleton. So that's the hard outside of the monarch. All right, so let's keep hiking. Again, we'll see them all on the ground, and we're going to see them obviously up in the trees. And speaking of trees, let's pause it right there, freeze. And does anyone see what is in the trees off in the distance? Does everyone see that?
Monarch butterflies.
Right, monarch butterflies. Thousands and thousands of monarch butterflies. In fact, remember we were talking about pine trees being softwoods trees? That means their tree limbs bend and not break under heavy weights. And so look how far they're bending down. They're so heavy from monarch butterflies that the limbs are almost pointed straight down. All right, so let's go ahead and hike over and get under some of these trees and check them out up close. So everyone look up in the sky. Do you see the monarchs up there?
Oh my god. Yes. Oh my god.
Whoa.
When you look like bees.
All right, so they're just everywhere in the trees, in these very large clumps on the tree limbs. And even right here, if I freeze here, does everyone see this tree trunk to the right? What's on there?
Butterflies.
Thousands and thousands of monarchs. We can't even see the tree bark. There's so many butterflies on there. Whoa. All right, so when we look at our butterflies on the trees here, so they're not really doing much again at these overwintering sites. They're just hanging out on the trees and waiting to start the migration back north. Now remember, this is not right now, this is in March, right before they fly north. And when we were on our expedition here. And so they open and close their wings and they show that beautiful orange color, and they'll even turn the entire forest orange when they all are opening their wings. You can Google aerial shots of the overwintering sites maybe later on in class, and you'll see entire forests that have turned from green to orange because there's so many butterflies. And so we had a great question that was submitted earlier from Royal Hall, North Carolina. Shout out to everyone down in North Carolina. That's my home state. And they wanted to know, how do butterflies sleep? And are they sleeping in the trees? And well, here's the thing. Butterflies don't really have eyelids. So, you know, you can make your guess if they sleep or not. I don't know how you sleep without eyelids, but here's what we do say is animals have times when they're active and times they're inactive. So when they're down here in Mexico, just hanging out in the trees, we say they're inactive. What do we say?
Inactive.
Right, so they're inactive. So maybe they're sleeping, I don't know, but they don't have eyelids. And then also, when we're talking about butterflies and when they're active and when they're inactive, well, they're daytime animals. And the very special science word we use for daytime animals is diurnal. Can you guys say diurnal?
Diurnal.
Have you ever heard of nocturnal animals?
No.
Right, like bats, right? So nocturnal animals are the opposite of diurnal animals, okay? They're more active at nighttime. So monarchs are diurnal. They're active at daytime and really inactive the entire winter time in Mexico. All right, so here we're in a traffic jam, and remember all those buses we saw down there. So lots and lots of people come here. Scientists come here to take measurements and collect data of the butterflies. And look up in the sky. I want to show this for proof. There are no rain clouds up there, ladies and gentlemen. This is all blue skies in Mexico today. And everyone, put on your little deer ears. So cup your hands and throw them behind your ears and point them towards the speakers. I want you to listen really closely of what it sounds like for thousands and thousands and thousands of monarch butterflies to be flying around you at one time. Whoa. All right. So, couple vocabulary words before we move on for everyone. So, remember what a group of monarchs are called at the overwintering sites? These big groups, what are they called?
Colony.
Colony. All right. So, a big group is called a colony. So, what are they doing in Mexico when they're in their colonies or in the trees? Are they dancing in the trees? Are they sleeping in the trees, eating in the trees? No, no, no. They are roosting in the trees. What are they doing in the trees, guys?
Roosting.
Right. So we use the word roosting. They are roosting in the trees. And just before we go, like again, when they open their wings, the entire farce turns orange. And look here. Look how many butterflies is this? Does anyone have a guess how many butterflies are right here?
Millions.
Millions, thousands, I don't know. Your guess is just as good as mine. And you can't count. It's impossible to get up there and count them one by one. But there's a way that scientists count them, and maybe we can get into it in a little bit. But first, we're going to answer some questions coming from everyone. We already have them coming in. We're going to go over to Twitter and answer a question, and we're going to give them a shout out and a question. So shout out to everyone at Jefferson STEM School up in Minnesota, and they have a question. How long does it take the monarchs to get to their spots in Mexico? Well, it depends where they're coming from. So if they're coming from Canada or Minnesota, a long, long way, it's going to take about 2 months. They leave in late August, and they get to Mexico at generally in late October, early November. So they are generally there by the 1st of November. So usually about 2 months, And I can tell you that monarchs, you can do this as a class. You can participate in citizen science projects. So you can get monarch tags just like these, and you can go catch little monarchs and you can put tags on them. And if anyone finds your monarch, they can call that little number right there on the tag and report that sighting. And you can go to monarchwatch.org if you want to get involved with that project. But one of the longest distances that I found in one day is 265 miles that a monarch was tagged one day, and the next day he was found, or her was found 265 miles away. So they can go quite a long ways. Mrs. Let's see, Powers Classroom wants to know, or they're giving a shout out over in New Jersey for all you guys as well. Let's go over to Mrs. Hart's class in Illinois. Do you guys have a question for us?
Ellie, go. Sarah, hurry up, Ellie.
Why do monarchs have orange on them?
Right. So it's like a warning sign that they're brightly colored monarch, and they're saying, "Don't eat me, don't eat me, don't eat me." Very similar to like venomous snakes. Many venomous snakes. Pop quiz, everyone. There's no such thing as a poisonous snake. Again, there's no such thing as a poisonous snake. A venomous snake, and like many venomous snakes have those bright colors. They're warning signs. Don't eat me. Poison dart frogs. There's all kinds of animals in the animal kingdom, if they're poisonous or venomous, that they're really brightly colored. It's a warning sign saying, don't eat me. So let's go ahead, and it's a great time for our next survey question. We're coming back to questions, but we're getting a lot of questions on the coloration of the monarchs. And so that brings us to our next survey question over on Kahoots. And our next question that we had submitted to us, which is...
Hi, GOB. How do monarch butterflies get their name?
All right. So they get their name because of that orange color that we just got asked about. So everyone grab your Kahoot devices, because our next survey question is about how they got their name. And they got their name because they were named after a monarch from Europe. They were named after a monarch from Europe. So if you don't know this, a king or a queen, another name for those people is a monarch. So they were named after a European monarch. So let's see if you know our next survey question. So grab your Kahoot devices if you're playing along with us. And my question for you is, whose monarch was the monarch butterfly named for? Was it red, England's monarch, blue, Italy's monarch, yellow, France's monarch, or green, Spain's monarch? All right, so most of you are saying England's monarch. And if you said England's monarch, you are correct. All right, so the monarch butterfly was named after King William III, who was called, his nickname was the Prince of Orange, because he was originally from Holland. And if you've ever watched World Cup or international soccer, you know that Holland's color is orange. They always wear orange jerseys. So he was the Prince of Orange. So when the people came from England to the New World and they saw this beautiful orange butterfly flying around, they named it after their monarch, the Prince of Orange. So that's how it got its name. Great question there. We have other questions coming in from, speaking of Europe, if a monarch landed on you, would you have a reaction on your skin? Coming from Ellie over in France. And so no, so here they aren't, you have to consume them. So they keep their the toxins from the milkweed is inside their wings and inside their exoskeleton. So an exoskeleton, insects are not like people. They don't have inside skeletons. They have outside skeletons called exoskeletons. I like to think of Iron Man, that hard outside suit he has, that's like an exoskeleton. Same thing with insects and monarch butterflies. And they keep their toxins in the outside part of their body, the exoskeleton. And because of this, they don't have many predators, except for two that I know of in Mexico. There's an oriole and a goose, two birds that have learned how to split open the abdomen, the middle part of their body, and only eat out the insides. So they don't eat the exoskeleton. So a great adaptation by those birds. All right, great questions coming in. Let's go over to Mrs. Root's classroom in California. Do you have a question for us?
Dan, did you have a question? Oh, I think we're still thinking. Does anyone have a question?
All right, so we'll come back to you guys if you think of it. And speaking of questions, we're going to come back to everyone's in a lightning round fashion after we play our Geo quiz, because we have just passed our 45-minute mark, and we do want to go ahead and wrap up for classrooms that do have to head out earlier than others, and they may want an opportunity to win a postcard from me, GOB, from the Learn Around the World studio. So we're going to do that right now. I hope everyone was paying attention, because every question from here on out is worth points. Remember, you only get 10 seconds to answer, and the quicker you answer, the more points you get. So before we head to that, I'd give our last random shout out today down to Boone Trail Elementary down in North Carolina. Big shout out to you guys down in the Tar Heel State. Okay, so everyone grab your Kahoot devices and make sure you get logged in, because every point or every question from here on out is worth points. That game pin is located at the bottom left hand of your screen, 595-361. Again, 595-361. As we wait for that, let's go ahead and answer a couple of these questions sent in to us. So Mrs. Elrod's classroom wants to know, how can we tell the difference between migrating monarchs and the ones that don't migrate? Well, typically the time of year. So they look the exact same. The only difference is that they change their behavior. So they stop laying eggs, they stop mating, and they start heading south. There's no visual difference. The only difference is next spring, because the longer they live, the more scars they'll have on their wings and so forth. Great question there. Coming in from Mrs. Tobolo's classroom, how do monarchs get their name? We just answered that. And let's go ahead and start that quiz. So good luck, everyone. We're starting in 5, 4, 3, 2. The majority of migrating monarchs winter in what Mexican state? Is it red, Michoacan, blue, the state of Mexico, yellow, the state of Huachul, or green, the state of Chihuahua? All righty, so it is the state of Michoacan. All right, John David takes the lead. Next question. Do all monarchs go to Mexico? Do all monarchs go to Mexico? Is it red yes or blue no? All right, remember no. So some of them go to California, some of them go down to Florida. Okay, Reese takes the lead. Great job, Reese. Okay, next question. What is the only food of the monarch caterpillar? Caterpillar. Is it red dandelions, blue milkweed, yellow smaller insects, or green flowers? Right, it is milkweed. All right, great job. Reese still in the lead. Connor second place. Great job, guys.
Come on, guys.
All right, what do the monarchs do at the overwintering sites? What do they do at the overwintering sites? Do they sleep in trees, dance in trees, roost in trees, or eat in trees? All right, so remember they roost. They roost in trees. Reese still in the lead. Okay, when do monarchs migrate to Mexico? Look at the wording there, guys. When do they go to Mexico? When do they fly to Mexico? In the winter, fall, summer, or spring? All right, so those of you who are looking closely at the wording there, so they migrate to Mexico in the fall. They are roosting in the trees in the wintertime. Great job, everyone, for participating in today's Geo quiz. And the winner is, dun, 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 Reese. Great job today, Reese, for winning our Geo quiz. If you are Reese's teacher, please make sure you submit your address, your school address, for us at learnaroundtheworld.com/prize. This is the only place I'm accepting them this year, so make sure you go to our website /prize to get me your address. Snail mail does not work without an address. All right, also for everyone, if you have to go ahead and get on with your day, thank you for hanging out with us and learning a little bit more about monarchs today. Make sure you go to flipgrid.com/geoshow if you want to continue the conversation there. For everyone else, get your questions in, and I'm here to answer questions for as long as you guys have to hang out with me. For everyone else, if you have to go, don't feel like you have to stay. Feel free to head out at any time. Let's go ahead and start with Mrs. Hart. So you guys heading out, or do you have a question?
We're going to ask one question, and then we got to go.
All right, go ahead, send them up.
Who had a question? Come on. Hurry.
Are monarch butterflies poisonous to humans?
Right. So I have never eaten a monarch butterfly, and nor do I know anyone who has. But I'm gonna say yes. But don't think of it. It's not going to like the most poisonous thing in the world. Okay, because even milkweed, where it's getting its toxins from, there are Native Americans that cooked milkweed, and so there is a way to prepare it where it will not hurt you, but do not try it. I do not know how to do that. Please do not try it. Okay. All right, great question there from Illinois. So we still have a couple of classrooms with us. Let's see who's with us. Mrs. Powers are still with us. Why do they only eat milkweed when they are caterpillars? I know that I don't fully know why, right? So I don't know the exact reason why. I do know that the family that the monarch is in, they are not the only caterpillar that that exclusively feeds off milkweed. Some other butterflies do as well. I will say that, but I don't know why if it's just the adaptation that they've come up with. So an adaptation is their behavior. They've just developed in a way that they only eat this food, and they kept surviving over time because they kept eating this poisonous food that gave them poison. And so they don't have a lot of predators as adults. Now the caterpillars have many predators. Other invertebrates, so other insects, are not affected by the milkweed. So ants, spiders aren't insects, but spiders, they have lots of predators as caterpillars. In fact, less than 1% of all monarch caterpillars will become adults. So lots of predators for them. Let's see, who else is with it? Mrs. Elrod is still with us. Is there a difference between a cocoon and a chrysalis? Yes, there is a difference. So they're not the same. So a cocoon, caterpillars have a little, it's kind of like a silk, right, that they have in their lip. So that's what they use that to attach their chrysalis. But the chrysalis is not made out of the same stuff. Other insects do make cocoons, but not monarchs. And I can show you a couple pictures of what that looks like. So a cocoon is going to be, again, that silky material. And let's bring up a couple of pictures and show you guys while you're here. So here's just a couple random pictures that I think are really cool if you haven't raised any monarchs. One is, remember, they're eating lots and lots of milkweed at one time, and over that 2 weeks as a caterpillar. And so this is droppings. So this is caterpillar droppings, and as you can see, kind of cute. When they turn into their chrysalis, this happens pretty quickly too, guys. I was so upset this summer when I raised my monarch that I was in the next room and I came back and he had already made his chrysalis. Happened super fast, and not like over minutes, but I was out of the room for maybe an hour or so. But anyways, this is a caterpillar's head just drops off when he makes his cocoon. So this is the part of his exoskeleton there, the outside hard part. So this is a chrysalis. Remember the earlier one I showed you, it was green. So right before it emerges, almost mine happened overnight. It turned completely black. So it went completely see-through, and you can see the monarch on the inside. You see his wings right on the outside there. And when they emerge out, what's kind of cool is that their wings are still kind of wet, kind of like a wet rag. It's kind of floppy, but they'll hang upside down on the bottom of their chrysalis and until their wings become rigid and hard, and then they'll walk up on top of the chrysalis and fly away when they can. This is what the chrysalis looks like when it comes after the butterfly leaves the chrysalis. So it's left clear when it goes out. And this is an up-close shot of the adult monarch that I raised this summer. And I love to show this because they have really amazing eyes. And in fact, they can see the widest spectrum of color. They can see the widest spectrum of color than they can even see UV light and of any animal that we know of. And this is butterflies in general, not just the monarch. So don't think that the monarch can see more than another type of butterfly. This is up close. So this is their wings. So a lot of people are surprised to know that they have scales on their wings. And so this is up close of our little monarch friend. And I think it kind of looks like, because they look so beautiful from far away, it's kind of like a pixelated digital picture, right? But they can have 1 million scales on their wings that make up their shapes and their colors to them. So really cool. Some good pictures for you guys of the monarch butterflies. So let's check it. See, we still have with this. We still have Mrs. Powers' classroom. How many monarch butterflies are in Mexico? And we'll finish it on that question. So here's the way it works really quickly is we get an opportunity once a year to count all the butterflies east of the Rockies throughout North America, because they're all down in the same place in Mexico. So the way that they count the butterflies is kind of cool. Remember earlier we said it's impossible to go around to every single tree one by one and count the monarch butterflies. Well, instead, what they do is they make a guess or an estimate. So what they do is they walk around all the trees that have monarchs in them, that have monarchs roosting in the forest. So they go around and they kind of mark out all the trees around the colony, and they take a measurement of that space inside of that circle. This is called an area for those of you that haven't learned this yet. So the area is measured, and they measure it. There's different measurements of area, but the one that they use is called hectares. And a hectare, the easiest way to think about it is 2.5 football fields. So what they do is they measure the colony sizes in hectares. And today's best guesses, remember these are guesses, you can see it has changed over time. It used to be 10 million. Today, 50 million monarchs for each hectare. So each 2.5 football fields of trees with monarchs in them, they guess it's around 50 million monarchs. So this is how they do it. And this is how they count them. And this is the counts of the population since 1993. So you can see that there was a huge peak in 1996, but ever since 1996, what's been happening to the population of monarchs? It's been going down and down and down, and hit an extremely low number in 2013. But as we said earlier, big push been across North America to plant butterfly gardens, and especially milkweed, and we've seen that number rebound a little bit. It's coming back up. But a healthy population of monarchs, scientists have determined you need about 6 hectares of monarchs. So that if you do your math, we know that 1 hectare equals 50 million. Okay, so that's 3. So they want 300 million monarch butterflies to be healthy. We're under that number right now. Okay, so last year's count was 2.91 hectares. So multiply that by 50 million, you get somewhere around, what is that, for each hectare, 50, 100, almost 150 million monarchs. And again, we hit a low point of 0.67 just a few years ago. And that's how they count the monarchs, and how we get the numbers. And why has the numbers been going down? Well, there are lots of theories, but one of the big reasons is humans, we have become really, really good at killing plants that we don't want in our gardens and in our big crop fields. And milkweed that used to grow in the center between corn rows and on the edges of agriculture fields, well, today we can spray we spray our fields and we kill all the unwanted weeds. And unfortunately, one of those weeds is milkweed. And you know from this show that no milkweed equals no monarchs. So instead of having all the milkweed that used to grow on farms before, now we have to help the monarchs out and plant butterfly gardens at our schools, in our towns. Some places have been planting it in between the interstates, all kinds of places. Wherever there's empty land, we can plant milkweed to help out the monarchs. So that's it in a nutshell. Thank you so much for everyone still with us, that's hanging out. And I am going to head on. We've been going over an hour. So much to talk about with the monarch butterfly. I'm GOB. You've been watching the Geo Show. And until next time, keep exploring.